This is The Express with Gary Allen, your 360-degree view of the world. Now, here's your host, Gary Allen.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of The Express. Gary Allen with you, and I hope you've had a wonderful week since the last time we got together. I have a wonderful guest for you. He's already online, and we'll get to Jim in just a couple of minutes. I just want to remind everybody, you can catch me on Facebook at Gary Allen, A-L-A-N, getting a lot of noise over there. I like that, and a lot of people enjoying the show. You can go to youtube.com to go to Gary Allen The Express. You'll be able to hear this show over this upcoming weekend. I used to post it on Fridays, but now I'm doing it on Saturday and Sundays. Seems like more people kind of get it at that particular point in time. Plus, you can hear all the past shows, any of them that you would like to rehear. This show repeats itself Thursday night at 7 o'clock on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com. And you can also catch me if you want to go ahead on my website, GaryAllenTalkShow.com. I'm having a lot of fun with that, too. Got a lot of response to that. And I hope everybody's having a good time. And if you're in the Central Florida area or not, on Monday nights, usually I have my own talk show on AM 1510 WMEL.com from 7 o'clock until 8, expanding the days on that as we start getting into the fall and probably even going to be going to 2 hours. As I said, we have an absolutely wonderful guest on this evening. And, you know, it's funny, ladies and gentlemen. And, Randy, I just want to say hello to you out there and thank you so much for always listening, as well as all of you out there that take the time to join us. It's funny. This gentleman came to me through Greg, Father Greg, my little brother, and he now lives. Jim Daopoulos lives in my old neighborhood, basically in Hollywood, Florida. He goes to some of the restaurants and even a couple of the bars that I used to go to. And when I'm going to be going down next month to visit some family down there, I'm going to drop off and have lunch with Jim in one of my old haunts. And so it's kind of interesting how small the world gets as you start traveling around. My guest tonight is a former, NFL official. He also worked for ESPN, NBC as an analyst on the different rules that were going on during the game. He is now connected with the American Athletic Conference as a coordinator of instant replay. As I said, he was with the National Football League from 2000 to 2012, supervisor of officials. While officiating in the NFL, he officiated numerous playoff games, a Super Bowl, a Pro Bowl, and was assigned to the World League and the NFL Europe, working the 1992 World League Championship in Montreal. And it's also funny there because we find out that we also are friends together with Brian Baldinger. And, of course, Brian, he's been on this show, and he's been on my local show here. This gentleman is a graduate of the University of Kentucky, so he's got to be a basketball fan, too. But without further ado, let me introduce to you a really neat guy, Jim Daopoulos. I think I got that right, Jim. Did I or did I not?
Oh, you got close, Gary. It's Daopoulos, but that's fine. You're close enough.
Yeah, I'll hear about it from Father Greg because I have a feeling he's listening in real close. Before we go too far, people probably don't know that it was you, but if you ever watched NFL films and you watched Jerry Glanville turn to an official and say, the NFL stands for not for long if you keep making those calls, which probably wasn't so much zoned at you as the overall crew, but you're the guy he talked to. How was your relationship with Jerry after that?
Well, Gary, it was great. And that was my initiation into the National Football League. What happened was it was my first game. It was a preseason game between the Houston Oilers and the Tampa Bay Bucks. And Jerry was coaching the Houston Oilers, and I was on a crew with some real veteran officials that had been around for a while. And at that time, you know, what they do is they cut your whistle off before you go out there, and they say, don't make any calls unless your 10-year-old son can make the same call. So I was working the game. I was on the sidelines, basically had just got run over because I thought I had made a great call. The quarterback had run into the sideline, and as he was going out of bounds, he got hit I went running toward him, which was a no-no at that time. And just as I pulled my flag out of my belt to throw it, a lineman ran right over me. 7 stitches in my chin, kind of knocked me for a loop. But what happened was one of the officials on the other side of the field, a guy named Dick Creed, who was just one of the best officials in the National Football League, said to Jerry Glanville, he said, that's our rookie over there. That was his first call. And then it all started. Jerry wanted to talk to the college guy, get the college guy over here. He told me this wasn't a boola game, and hit me with that. Do you know what NFL stands for? And I was absolutely frozen in my tracks. And he said, and when I said, I was kind of shaking my head, he looked at me and said, "Not for long. If you keep making those certain kind of chicken calls, we're going to both be sacking groceries." And that was my indoctrination into the National Football League, and had a great relationship with Jerry over the years. After I left the field and went to New York to work up there, they did a couple of follow-ups on that where we kind of talked. And every time I ran into Jerry in an airport or something, he'd run up to me and he'd kind of give me a big hug, and he would tell everybody, how famous he made me. And I said, yeah, but you were getting all the residuals on that, Jerry. So it kind of worked out great. But what a great guy, and I had a great relationship with Jerry Glanville.
From 1989 to 2000, you were a back judge, and then in 1999, you were umpire in the Super Bowl. Speaking of coaches, I know from personal experience that there were a number of NFL coaches, and there still are, who are not exactly the easiest people to get along with on the sidelines to begin with. One of the best at manipulating officials was Don Shula. I know that for a fact. And I also could mention quite a few other people too that I know for a fact were not easy to get along with. How did you deal? As an official, does it go in one ear and out the other? I mean, I remember the famous line about Hank Stram when Hank Stram was ripping into some official, and the official said, "No, I thought you were talking about the fact that you're out here on the field," and it caught Stram off guard completely. Talk about the relationships, which were good for the most part. I don't think there was ever any animosity. It's not like in baseball where sometimes teams just don't want a certain umpire to be in their games because he doesn't seem to ever. But talk about those relationships. It's just on the field, and once that's over with, it's over with.
That's exactly right. It's not even it's on the field, but after the play's over, it's over. It's kind of interesting in football. The game has changed so much. When I was on the field, from 89 to 2000, we had a little bit more conversation with the coaches. He could tell you what he thought of you, and you could tell him what you thought of him. But over the years, what's happened is, with the improvement in the technology, with the video and the audio and the close-ups, we had to kind of change our attitudes on the field because of the fact that so much was being picked up, with the microphones, with those high-tech microphones, and it was being brought back. So, it's an interesting game, and it's an interesting relationship. The coaches understand that you paid your dues to get to the National Football League. Do they question you? They're always going to question your calls, but they understand the professionalism that goes on out there. And I can tell you that there were a few coaches that I never had run-ins with them. Officials don't have run-ins. We have a difference in opinion. I'll tell you, once the game is over, there is very little conversation about, hey, what happened on that play? Or the next time you see him, he's going to say, hey, you missed that. Or, that just doesn't happen because of the fact that the game just goes on. There's no timeout like there is in basketball. There's no timeout like you have in a baseball game. You just get to the next play. So you better be ready for the next play.
Right. Let me ask you something, because you always hear announcers say this, and when I did play-by-play, I would say it too. It's not true. I know it. I'm not going to mention my relationship to the NFL too much. You and I talked about it before, but is there such a thing as the makeup call?
In other words, I know what you're talking about, Gary, and
yeah.
It's a great question. And every fan thinks that the official is going to, that's a makeup call. You missed one here, so you're going to make it up. But let me tell you what happens with NFL officials. NFL officials are evaluated and graded on every call of every game. So basically, they're working toward a percentage. They have to meet, when I was on the field, the top officials went to playoff games, all based on your grades. So if you had a game and you made a mistake and you're downgraded for that, well, what happens if I'm going to make a makeup call? Well, gosh, I'm going to get another mistake. Now I get two mistakes, and I'm going to lose my opportunity to work in the playoffs. So, it's an easy conversation for announcers, for coaches, for fans and spectators to say, hey, that's a makeup call. But I can tell you emphatically it's not done in the National Football League, because all it's going to do is cause the official an opportunity to work in the playoffs and probably an opportunity to advance. And bottom line, he could get released with too many mistakes.
You're listening to The Express. Gary Allen with you with Jim Daopoulos. I think I got it right. Anyway, he's
you got it.
He's been an NFL official for well over 20 years, also in college. Now he's with the American Athletic Conference. He's done Super Bowls, playoff games, worked for NBC and ESPN as a football rules and analyst for a number of years. Let's go back in time. Had I known the kind of money you guys make, I would have gone into NFL officiating. But saying that is one thing. Accomplishing it is another. Talk about what one has to go through, because the first female official, I guess, took the field last year or the year before. It's not an easy road. So talk about that for anybody out there who may be in college or in high school and is thinking, well, I'm not going to be an NFL football player, but boy, I would like to stay connected to the game. Talk about the road to get there.
Well, it's great, Gary, and it's a great connection to the game. Let me just kind of give you my background. Basically, I was a student at the University of Kentucky. I was an undergraduate student, and I had just got married. And the following year, we had a child, and I was trying to go to graduate school. I was in graduate school, trying to make some money during that as a graduate assistant, and I was looking for a way to kind of stay involved in sports. So I started officiating intramural football, basketball, baseball, and I went from intramurals to getting onto a high school crew, and then you spend 4 or 5 years working in high school, and then you start working your way up to small college, Division III, Division II. I worked in the Ohio Valley Conference for 7 years, moved on to the Southeastern Conference, which was basically really where I wanted to. I thought that that's where I was going to stop. I had set a goal to get to the National Football League, but my ultimate goal was to get into the Southeastern Conference, to work the Alabamas, the Auburns, the Florida, the Tennessee, those types of schools. So I was very fortunate. I did 10 years in the Southeastern Conference, and then got the opportunity to go to the National Football League. And it was interesting because it was about I'd say almost a 20-year process to get to that point. And when I got the call to go to the National Football League, there was an official working in the NFL named Tommy Bell, who was living in Lexington, Kentucky, and was basically a mentor to me. And Tommy was an attorney, and I said to him, I said, I really want to go to the NFL, but I love the SEC. And I said, I was really having a tough time with it. And he said, think of it like this. If you're an attorney, do you want to work in the appellate court or do you want to work in the Supreme Court? And that's really what it came down to is I was working in the Supreme Court when I get to the National Football League. So it's about a 20-year process to get there. Now the officials, they try to fast track some of the officials who have some football background. But basically the problem is that you've got to have that experience, and nothing can teach you more than being on the field and being experienced. So that's one of the problems that the NFL has right now, is that after I finished my tour of duty, so to speak, as an official on the field, I went to work in the league office, and I was named I was the director of the NFL Europe program, where I hired college officials and European officials and some NFL officials. And this was a developmental program that we used to train the guys before we brought them into the NFL.
Well, Jim, let me interrupt you real quick here.
Sure.
What qualifications do you or do I need? What skills do I need for you to say, okay, let's give this guy a shot as an official?
Well, you have to have a little bit of athletic ability. You've got to be able to run. You've got to be able to study the rules and understand the rules. And other than that, you've got to have the time to put into it to become a good official. There's no physical abilities that you have to have other than, can you get out there and do the job and be able to move up and down the field?
Mm-hmm. In other words, you don't have to look like Ed Hockley.
You don't have to look like Ed, but let me tell you, I knew Ed before he became a referee, and Ed didn't look like that before he became a referee. He's one of the really good guys, and I've had the opportunity to work on a crew with Ed for a number of years, and probably one of the top referees in the NFL. But when Ed became a referee, and no one that comes into the NFL, they tried one, but normally you don't come in as a referee. But once he was named a referee, Ed kind of worked on his appearance, his look, and has really kind of gone to the top right now because he is basically the number one referee that they have right now.
Now, during the process, and we're going to get back to your getting into the NFL, but during the process, are there referees during the season or over a period of time that, shall we say, don't exactly cut the mustard? They're not really calling a good game, or it's a bad crew. That's another thing. A bad crew. Do they break that up eventually and to see if it's you or another member of the crew? I mean, what happens to refs and officials that just are not doing the job?
Well, they're not given contracts because referees are all on 1-year contracts. So they don't have it's not a job for life, although some people think they have jobs for life. But basically, they're evaluated every year. And if they have to meet certain guidelines, they have to meet certain scores, they have to meet certain in order to qualify for the playoffs, they have to meet a certain standard. And if they don't meet these standards 1 or 2 years in a row, then basically, they're told that, we're not going to renew your contract next year. And it's so they're on the firing line every week to do the best job that they can. I know there's people out there that say, hey, this guy should be fired or this official should be fired. But I can tell you the evaluation process is pretty intense. And what they'll do is they'll keep an eye on officials. They give them training. They spend a lot of time with them. But if they don't cut the mustard, they don't stay around very long.
And the pay is very, very good. And we're going to go into that in a little bit because there's a subject we're going to get to in the back half of the show about how the NFL's decided to hire a fifth of the referees, about anywhere from 21 to 24 people on a full-time basis, which is long overdue. And I don't know why it hasn't been done up till now. Who grades an official? In other words, you get your grades. Who does it? Is it just NFL officials or is it coaches? Is it members of the league?
The coaches have the ability to send questions into the league office. When I worked in the league office, I was one of the supervisors of officials. There were 5 of us up there along with the director. And basically, we were the ones evaluating the film. We'd spend anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, evaluating the game film, going over correct calls, incorrect calls, positioning, tendencies that, mistakes that the officials would make. And, it's a very, the process is really unbelievable to see what the officials go through to be evaluated. But there are individuals up there. Coaches, no coach has ever gotten an official into the league, and no coach has ever had an official fired. So it's, the officials understand that the coaches aren't going to make decisions on whether they have jobs or not, because they don't want to have that kind of relationship, with the coaches and the officials.
And Yeah, and there's a lot of strong coaches that have coached in the NFL. That one I mentioned earlier, the only one I'll probably mention all night, although I do love Don Shula. I know Don personally, but he was on the competition committee for years. And it's funny too when we talk about the NFL. For years with him on the competition committee, people thought, aha, he gets his team, the Dolphins, scheduled early in the season when it's baking hot in South Florida. And he plays the middle games in the upper northern cities where it isn't quite frigid cold yet. And then he gets the remainder of his games down there when it's the frigid cold up north and it's still moderate in South Florida. People would think that for years. That's not true. That's not how it worked out. And Shula would be the first one to tell you that. But people have the craziest ideas. And some of the fans, to be honest with you, when I lived in L.A., I went to see a couple of Raider games. Those fans scared the bejesus out of me, and I've been around the games for a long time. They're fun.
Yeah. They're fun up in Oakland. I used to love coming off the field and walking around the field in Oakland before the game and go down by the down by the end zone where all those crazies were. And that's what makes the NFL so great is individuals and is teams like that and the fan bases that they have like that. So it's kind of exciting to do that. But you're right. Everybody thinks the coaches have some influence, and it just doesn't happen. It's kind of like you think somebody will say to me, well, I see Ed Hockley. He works every Monday night game. Or I see Terry McCauley. He's working this game. But basically the officials, they only work one Monday night game every year. They can only work a team twice a season. They have to have 6 weeks between the first game and the last game. They can only get them once at home. So, there are a lot of guidelines, and they have the same guidelines for the teams. Teams have to play certain teams and all that. So it's not a quick process to do all that scheduling. It's a long, drawn-out process, but they do a great job in the NFL, with the scheduling and the assignments.
You're listening to The Express. Gary Allen with you, along with my guest and my friend, Jim Daopoulos from Boston, Massachusetts, where he is good friends with my little brother, Father Greg. He's a New England Patriot fan. I won't hold that against you, Jim. Hey, by the way, when I do come down, we got to go over to Grandpa's and eat because I love that restaurant down there.
Absolutely, right up the street from my house.
Yeah, and by the way, if you get to go over there or you go over to Capone's, and Richie or Johnny are still working there, tell them I said hi if they remember me. I don't know if they do or not, but here's a question that one of my coworkers wanted me to ask you. There's a bad call. Okay, I'll use an illustration. It was in college, and I think because I'm a fan of the U, and you love the U as well. The game against Ohio State, where we really won the game, and they said there was interference on the final play of the game. And it took like 5 seconds for the official to throw the flag. Is there a point? And first of all, I don't think there was interference at all. Of course, I'm biased.
There wasn't. It wasn't. It was a missed call. It was just a missed call.
And it cost us our national championship. What happens? Do you ever see a day when there'll be a recourse for that, where they go back and they do an instant replay and they go, nope, it was a bad call. The play stands as it is, blah, blah, blah. I know we can do that in the NFL. And by the way, had they had instant replay back in 1967, and I know I'm going back, the field goal that the Green Bay Packers supposedly made against the Colts, they didn't. The Colts would have gone to Super Bowl 2, 3, and 5. Had we had instant replay. But what about that? Do you ever see a day when a call like that can be overturned at the end of a game, or is that just something that's never going to happen?
There's so much discussion, Gary, about instant replay. I really got into replay this last couple of years working for the American Athletic Conference. And instant replay is a great officiating tool to correct correctable errors. But at some point, you've got to say enough is enough. It's a game played by individuals, officiated by individuals, and there are going to be mistakes. Officials make mistakes, coaches make mistakes, and players make mistakes. Now, what you've got to do is you've got to kind of make some guidelines, and they've got guidelines on what they can look at and what they can't look at. Are we going to start saying well, we can call, can we look at pass interference, and can we call holding, and can we call false starts? At some point, you've got to have enough confidence in the officials that are on the field to do the job. And are they going to make mistakes? Absolutely, they're going to make mistakes. They make mistakes in high school, they make mistakes in college, and they make mistakes in the pros. And you try to limit those mistakes. However, it's just the nature of the game, and that was a tough call in the Miami Ohio State game.
Oh,
but you know what? It was a miss. It was a miss. But do you think if something happened earlier that could have affected the game? Why put the whole game at that point? I think the one person in the whole country that probably felt the worst about it is the official. After he looks at it, he's got a view on the field, and he looks at it, and he's got to make a split-second decision. We, as spectators and observers, etc., we can look at it at different angles and slow it down. But, again, I'm sure, these guys take these games pretty seriously, these officials, and mistakes really hurt. They hurt a lot more than people probably realize.
Well, I'll tell you what, as a UM fanatic, I went berserk. I absolutely went berserk. It was a close game, and there were some calls leading up to it that probably could have gone against Miami that weren't. So, I guess things kind of even out in the karma of life. You're now coaching in coaching. You're now officiating in college. But let's stick with the NFL for just a little bit longer here, and then in the second half, we're going to talk about some other things. If there was any rule or rules that you would like to see changed or implemented, what would they be?
Oh, gosh, I'm asked this question so often. And I think the one thing I would like to see the NFL do a better job at, I'd like to see them take more of an instant replay view of illegal hits on quarterbacks and defenseless players. The game is so tough to officiate, especially for a referee who stands behind the quarterback and he's kind of 10 yards off to the side, and he's going to make a determination if that defensive lineman or that defender comes in, if that guy is being hit with the chest, is he hitting him in the chest or under the chin? Is he hitting him with the helmet or the mask? Is he, he's got to put all these things together from an angle that's very difficult, and he's got to protect that quarterback. So I'd like to see that. There's a lot of talk about pass interference. Try to put it more like, you have 50 and 60-yard pass interference calls, but I can tell you, all the research that has been done with the NFL for the years I was up there, and now, since that time, they look at that very closely. And most of the pass interference calls are at 10 and 15 and 20 yards. This short passes. Only once in a while will you have that long pass. And if you start giving them 15-yard penalties, these defensive players are so good that when they get beat, you won't see any long touchdown passes because they'll just foul them and bring it back to 15 yards. So I don't think that's a good change. But I like the use of replay to correct some correctable errors, but I don't think it needs to be brought into judgment.
The old adage in the NFL, and I've talked to a lot of offensive linemen, including our good friend Brian Baldinger, can holding be called on just about every play?
No. And for the reason, Gary, that I talked to you earlier, that if they're holding on every play and it's not being called, that somebody's being downgraded for it. People have got to understand that there are specific rules for holding. A defensive guy or an offensive lineman can put his hands on a defensive lineman. He can grab him on the shoulders and control him. The hold occurs when he twists them, when he turns his shoulders, when his feet get beat. There are certain things that you look for as an official. I mean, everybody grabs out there. So, is there holding on every play? Yeah, there's holding, but it's legal holding. Once it becomes illegal, it better be called by the official.
Right. The one guy of all the officials that I always thought, oh my God, he's going to get killed. One of these days, one of these guys is going to get run over and he's going to be carried off the field. And that's the back judge behind the linebacker. I thought,
the
oh my God.
Umpire.
The umpire. This guy is going to get, some of these guys are going to get trampled and you'll never hear from them again, especially with some of the linebackers I know in the league.
Well, I can tell you I was an umpire for 3 years. My first year, I did the championship game. The second year, I went to the Super Bowl as an umpire. I always equated to, if you play in baseball, do you want to be the right fielder or do you want to be the catcher? And if you're the umpire, you're in where the action is all the time. Yeah. And I can tell you, I wasn't the greatest official, but I might have been one of the smartest officials because I knew who to get behind when I was getting in position. I always got behind a big linebacker who could protect me a little bit, so I stayed kind of off his shoulder to kind of look over. And the players tell you right where the ball's going. You key off the guard. The guard's going to bring you to the point of attack. You know, football, it's not rocket science. You know, so basically they're showing you where you have to go. So you just look for points of attack, and that's where you go. Now, you'll get bumped once in a while, but I can tell you in all my years, I never was knocked down on the field.
Did you ever pick up on the signals? And the reason I say is because of one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time, of course, was Peyton Manning, and before that it was Johnny Unitas. But did you ever pick up on anything that Peyton ever did or said other than Omaha?
Never. I could never figure out what they were doing. You know, and again, a lot of it was just talk because you could usually pretty much tell what was going on and what the plays. You looked at situations down in distance. You tried to anticipate what was coming up. But as I said, you watched the guard and the centers, and they told you exactly what was going to be. Is it going to be a run or is it going to be a pass?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Switching gears here for just a couple of minutes because I think it's an important thing for you to talk about because as an official, you're just as susceptible to this as the players are. And we're not going to stay on this long, Jim, but you're listening to The Express. Gary Allen with you. Jim Daopoulos is my guest. He's an official in the NFL for a number of years, as well as working for ESPN and NBC as a rules analyst. Is the NFL doing enough about head trauma and CTE?
Well, that's a tough question, but yes, I think they are. I think they're aware of it. They're doing what they can. Somebody asked me. I was on an interview the other day, and I was asked, could they legislate helmet-to-helmet hits out of football? Mm-hmm. And the only way they could do that, I think, realistically, is to eliminate the game of football. Yeah. Because players hit, helmets hit. It's just the nature of the game. Players nowadays do not go. You don't have the headhunters like you used to have. You know, helmet hits occur oftentimes when a guy dips or there's guys miss their timing or something like that. But you don't see players realize how serious the injuries can occur, with helmet hits. They understand that it's going to cost them a lot of money also if they are, that they have helmet-to-helmet hits. Right. But to say they're not going to happen, and the league is aware of it, and the league finds these players, and they try to stop it, but they can never say, don't hit, you can't do it, because it's got to just happen out there.
Well, it's a shame what's happening. I knew and know a lot of the 17-0 team, and I'm sure you read that article that was in the Miami Herald not long ago, how Nick Bonacani and Mike Colon, one of the great gentlemen, a man of great faith, are suffering. Mike says he walks into a room now and doesn't even know why he's there. Nick Bonacani's in bad shape. Jim Kick, who I used to sit and have a couple of beers with, I love Jim very, very much as a friend. Tim Robbie was a dear friend of mine down there in South Florida, still is. It's just sad to see this going on. I've said, Jim, that the NFL in about 50 to 75 years is going to look a lot different than it does now, because I think eventually this is going to take its toll. I mean, the recent report was, 111 players who have passed on, 110 suffered from severe CTE. This is nothing to play with. But I also would like to see a study done on guys who just played high school football and never went any further, or guys that played high school and college football and didn't go anywhere. 2 more reports. But I know from what Bruce Laird, who is going to be on this program in the not too distant future and on my local show, and is a good friend of mine who played for the Baltimore Colts, he said, Gary, we're hitting each other 35 miles an hour, 20 times a game. How many years before it starts to take a toll on the noggin? And he said, I'm fine for now. And that's the other side of this coin too. You can have guys that are in the trenches with each other, and one guy will get it and the other guy, nothing, zero. So there's probably the same kind of thing that goes along with smoking. You're susceptible for it or you're not. And it's a shame because a lot of good men, Dave Duerson, I knew, he lived in my building in Chicago, and I do seriously miss that man. He was a great, great man. And contrary, Jim, what a lot of people don't understand, when they're off the field, these guys are like gentle giants in many cases. I used to sit with the fridge and talk, and he was just like a big old kid. And some of these other guys, and Johnny Unitas, who was serious, but he was a fun-loving guy. These guys are great gentlemen, and they're heroes, but they're great gentlemen. So I hope that the incidence of CTE will decrease, but I have a feeling it won't. I don't know of any officials that have been classified with it yet. Do you at all, Jim?
No, and one of the things that occurred, as we mentioned earlier, I was an umpire, which was like a linebacker, and over the years they have decided to move that position out, and now he's over in the offensive backfield because they were concerned with head injuries, head trauma of players coming across. Although I can tell you, in my 25 years in the NFL, I did not see one official take a shot in the head going across the middle. I saw some guys get knocked down a number of times, but again, they're concerned about the safety of the officials as well as the players. But you hit the nail on the head. It's a very it's a slippery slope that the NFL is dealing with right now with all this head trauma. You see so many players saying, "That's it. I'm done. I'm not playing anymore. I'm finished with this game." In the middle of their careers. That's the other thing, right? Young players understanding it. So it's a tough thing to think about. Do you want your son to play? Parents are, so it's difficult, and I know that the league is thinking about it a lot, but I don't know. It just seems like people they want to play football. It's the game right now. It's not baseball any longer. It's football. No. That's the game that people want to play.
Yeah. It's funny too, at the end of that article, each and every one of the Dolphins that were interviewed, and it was just about everybody that they could find on the 17-0 team. And as you listen to other interviews around the country, and Brian Baldinger has told me that every one of these guys said, "Yeah, I'd do it again."
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think they, and some of them realize it. So it's a tough subject, and we could spend a whole night discussing the pros and cons of it, and it's something that the league is very aware of it. They are dealing with it, but where do you go from here with it? I just don't know if I don't know where they're going to go with it. That's the thing that's so unique about it.
Right. Jim, let's talk a little bit about instant replay. Why did it take so long for the league to bring this along? Was it just a matter of tradition or convincing everybody this is a good thing for the league?
I think it's a little bit of everything. You had the old timers that kind of felt, you didn't want to break up, what we had here. And then you had, the young bucks that came up and said, "Hey, look at the technology." They were concerned about the technology. I remember when I first got into it, when I first started, we had replay, and then we took it out for a couple of years, and then we put it back in. But as I said, I've been involved with replay for a number of years, and I just think it's an absolutely wonderful officiating tool. And it's just each year it keeps improving. It's making the game better. Unfortunately, everybody wants a perfect game, and the ball doesn't even roll true. It's kind of an oblong shaped spheroid, and it doesn't even. But they want the game to be perfect. But it just took a while for everybody to kind of, get on board with this. But I think
Right.
I don't think you have too many dissenters right now that don't want instant replay.
Right. And of course, every year it gets better as the technology gets better. Let's talk about your Super Bowl. Butterflies in your stomach. Which Super Bowl was it, by the way?
It was Super Bowl 33 between the Denver Broncos and the Atlanta Falcons. It was John Elway's last game. It was played at Pro Player Stadium down in Miami, and it was it's the ultimate assignment if you're an NFL official. I can tell you, it was words just can't explain what it was like. My 80-year-old father was sitting in the stands, and I even get emotional now thinking about it. And it was just, he was so proud, and we were, it was kind of interesting. A quick story to tell you. We were talking, and we go through a pregame the day on Friday. We spend an hour just walking through the coin toss to get that down. And I mean, everything is, the choreography is just unbelievable for this thing. Everybody's in a certain place at a certain time. And I'm standing next to one of my partners, the field judge at the time. And, we're watching, and they're playing the national anthem, and tears are just going down my cheeks. I mean, it was so emotional. And he said, "Are you ready to go?" I said, "Yeah, I'm ready to go." So we get the players all lined up, and the kickers are ready. The kickers all set to go, and I'm standing there, and I look next to me, and my partner's not there, and I'm thinking, "What's going on?" And I look, I'm on the wrong side of the field. So, Gary, you can't, it's crazy. I'm on the wrong side of the field. So here I go in front of 70 or 80,000 people in Miami, and the millions on TV. I go into a slow jog across the field, and I stop with a kicker, and he's got this quizzical look on his face. And I said to him, "Hey, I screwed up, and I'm on the wrong side of the field. Just bear with me, and we'll get it going in just a minute." And I jogged off the other side, so everybody thought that I was doing exactly what I was supposed to do, except my boss looked at me at the end of the game, and he said, "What the heck was that all about?" And I said, "You don't even want to know." But, it was, those are the things that happen that, you kind of laugh at. But once the game began, it was just another football game. It was with all the hoopla and all that. But once that opening kickoff goes and you get out there, you get a couple of snaps, it's just another football game to officiate.
And let's talk about your time in Europe. You worked with my buddy Brian Baldinger over there. You cut your teeth on that, helping get that league going. The NFL keeps saying that they want to put a team in London, and I keep thinking to myself, that's not going to happen. If you talk to teams that come back from London, they have jet lag up the butt. I mean, the Colts had to play in London last year. Now, and unfortunately, they didn't get the following Sunday off, and they had to play a game, and they lost. They got beat badly, and they said it was because of the jet lag. I mean, do you ever anticipate, because of your time in Europe, that there's ever going to be a team there in Europe or in London?
Gary, that's a great question. And I don't think they think about jet lag. I don't think they think about the players.
Money.
I think all they think about is money. And they want to get that dollar out in overseas, where the marketing, with the jerseys, etc., will generate money for the league. I think they're going to have 4 games over there this year. I had a great experience over there. We had games when I was on the field as an official working in the World League. I had the opportunity to work at Wembley Stadium, which was just unbelievable. Games in Scotland, so I got to play golf at the Old Course. I was in Amsterdam. I was in Germany. I was in Barcelona. I mean, it was just a great opportunity, but it was a great tool for the officials because it gave a great training area. But it was also great for guys like Baldy, who was over there training to be an announcer, to work on the sidelines, to work play-by-play. So it was a training ground and for players. So it was a great training ground. Right. And it cost I think it cost each of the teams about $700,000 to run that league. which wasn't even one player's salary, but they just kind of felt that it was money that was not being well spent.
Yeah, I thought the fans over there really appreciated the games. I thought games were interesting. I know Baldy and I have talked about it a number of times, and but I just honestly can't see a team in Europe right now. You're listening to The Express. Gary Allen with you, along with my guest and a former NFL official now with the American Athletic Conference, Jim Daopoulos, who's a dear friend now of mine through my brother Greg. Earlier when we were talking about instant replay, I forgot to bring up the fact that there's a new system of instant replay, an instant replay unit on the field, hopefully to speed up the game so they don't have to wait so long on instant replay or the officials jogging over to the sidelines. They can now bring the unit out onto the field. So I would assume that that's supposed to help speed up the decision-making on instant replay.
Well, to be quite honest with you, Gary, the decisions are made up in New York before the official gets to the sideline. Somebody's already, and that's been like that for about the last 3 or 4 years, although they haven't really publicized that too often. Basically, what happens is the referee has a little earpiece in there, and as he's walking over to the sideline, somebody up in New York is communicating with him. Last year, it was Dean Blandino, who basically was the guru of instant replay. Dean was the director or the senior vice president, whatever you want to call him up there. He was in charge of officiating, but his forte was instant replay. He had never officiated on the field, but he was an instant replay guy. So he was the one making all the decisions up in New York. So he would go to the sideline, and if there was a play there, he would just say to the referee, it's a catch, or it's not a catch, or it's a out of bounds, or he would tell the referee the result of what was going on there, and the referee would make that announcement. And it bothered me a little bit because they started doing that because they wanted consistency in the officials making those decisions, and they weren't comfortable with some of the officials that were making the decisions and some of the decisions that the referees were making. And my feeling was if they weren't comfortable with them, then get somebody that you're comfortable with, to do that. But anyways, they got it worked out, and I think they've got the system in place right now how they want it, and I think it's gonna work out fine for them.
Let's move on here. We've got about 15 minutes left here. Let's talk about this new this new decision by the NFL for this season coming up, and hopefully that it'll increase. The NFL has decided to hire some full-time referees for the 2017 season, but they're not hiring all of them. They're only hiring, I guess, between 21 and 24 people. And I say folks because we now have a female that's an official in the NFL. Did you ever work with her, by the way?
No, I did not.
But you've met her, I'm sure.
No, I have not.
Oh, okay. And you're going to take the fifth, and you're going to stand by that.
Let's just move on from there.
Okay. How come it took so long? Other sports hire their officials full time. Why does it take the NFL so long?
Because there's no need to have full time officials, Gary. It doesn't make any sense at all what they're doing. They're going to hire 21 to 24 officials and make them full time. However, they're not giving them any benefits, and they can still work full-time jobs outside of football. They're not having any restrictions. It's an opportunity for the NFL to say we have full-time officials.
Right.
I have said for the last number of years, the best officials, the better officials in the NFL work full-time right now. They are working full-time. The better officials work at it all week long. Now you make somebody full time. I don't know what their responsibilities is going to be. The teams don't. They can't go to practice because once the season starts, the teams just do walkthroughs. There's not a lot of practice going on. Are they going to watch more film? Is that going to make them better officials? I don't think it's going to improve officiating one iota. Other than it's going to get the officials a lot more money.
Yeah, according to what I'm reading, by the year 2019, NFL salaries for some officials will go up to $205,000 a year. A rookie right now this year will make $78,000. And as you said, with this new plan of theirs, there'll be no health benefits. But they are required, as I'm sure all officials are, to work between 35 and 40 hours a week preparing for the games through training, physical study, rules, travel to the games, etc. A 10-year veteran, I didn't know this, makes $200,000 now, but a veteran umpire in baseball makes $400,000 for the same period of time. And the NFL makes a heck of a lot more money than Major League Baseball.
But
I don't get it.
It's and I don't get it. Like I said, I love the fact that they're getting more money. I think it's great for the officials. But again, baseball umpires are working 4 or 5 days a week, and they're on the road every day, and they go for a whole lot longer. They go for twice the number of games.
Right.
And the argument for the NFL officials is they work every game that the NFL has. They just have fewer games.
Right.
So when you try to compare apples to apples, it's not the same thing.
Right.
The initial collective bargaining agreement said that if a Major League Baseball umpire with 15 years experience makes $400,000, then we're going to make 15-year football official will also make $400,000. But it didn't come out quite like that during the negotiations for these. This is just a process. They're trying to work these guys into full time. Why 21 to 24? I don't know. Why not all 124 of them? I think it's just a matter of them being able to say we've got officials that are full time.
Right.
But again, I just don't know if they're going to work any more or any harder or put in any more time than they put in during the season.
You're listening to The Express. This is Gary Allen along with my good friend Jim Daopoulos, NFL official for well over 20 years and now with the American Athletic Conference. And he also worked for ESPN and NBC as a rules analyst for a number of years. You are a fan of the game, and as I said earlier, you're a New England Patriots fan, and I know every official growing up as a kid, as we discussed on the phone, is a fan probably of this team or that team. Is it easy to get on the field and just forget for a second you're a Patriots fan, or does the league know you're a Patriots fan and keep you away from New England games?
I can't say it's easy, because nothing is easy once you get out there, because you've got pressure on you. Sometimes you'll find yourself, if you're a Patriots fan or if you're a fan of a specific team, you're almost a little bit. You don't go around. You don't go around letting everybody know this is my team or this is my team or this is my team. All officials, just like probably all officials in any sport, people grow up, with favorite teams. It's just like officials, and it's just. I know my first 5 or 6 years in the NFL, I didn't have a Patriots game. I didn't work one Patriots game, and not because they thought I was a Patriots fan. I'm a Bruins fan. I'm a Celtics fan. I'm a diehard Red Sox fan. But we're just fans of the game, and that's what it is. And officials are fans of the game, and that's what happens out there. But you go out there and you try to do the best job you can. And I can tell you, if you're not doing the job, you'll be noticed pretty quickly. You'll be noticed very quickly by a lot of people that you don't want noticing that you're not doing a good job.
Yeah,
so you got to deal with that.
Yeah. I'd be horrible, Jim. If a call that I had to make was went against my Colts, I would be. Although the way they're playing these days, it really doesn't make much difference. Do you have a favorite game of all time that you officiated, or a number of games that you officiated that really sparked great memories for you?
Well, it would have to be the Super Bowl, because that's the ultimate football game, with the National Football League being assigned to the Super Bowl. But again, as we talked earlier, I've had the opportunity to work, a World Bowl game up in Montreal, Canada. I've worked the Pro Bowl. I've worked division, a conference championship game. So, it was just the idea of getting out there and working games and having the opportunity in college to officiate games with Herschel Walker playing, and Bo Jackson playing, and refereeing games at Alabama and Auburn and Georgia. I've just been very blessed with my, with my career, where I've worked and the opportunities that I've had. And this is from a guy that, I actually wanted to be I played basketball in college at a junior college in Massachusetts before I went to Kentucky, thinking I was a basketball player. I actually wanted to go to the NBA. I wanted to be an NBA official, and I was refereeing college basketball, and but the breaks came in football, so I ended up going to football.
Well, now that you bring that up, I mean, it's not easy to get to be an official in the NBA or any other league, but is it a little tougher because there's only 2 guys or 3 guys on a squad, official squad in the NBA to break through to the NBA?
I don't know how difficult it is. I know there's a long process, a developmental program. They have 3 officials, but they have an awful lot. I don't even know the numbers of officials, just like in baseball. But any official that moves up through the ladder and gets to the professional level has really had to have paid their dues and done the things that are necessary to become a professional official.
Mm-hmm. Well, we got a couple of minutes left here in the time, and it's been great having you on. The hardest fans you ever had to deal with?
The hardest fans I ever.
Well, we talked about the Raiders, but
the Raiders fans are fun. They're good guys. They love their game. The Browns fans are pretty tough. They're pretty. They're pretty tough. The fans in Philadelphia. Yeah, the fans in Philadelphia were pretty tough. I think I had my toughest situation with Chuck Knox when he was the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. So I've had some interesting situations, but like I said, I wouldn't trade any of them for any of the situations. Not one situation came up that I felt uncomfortable in.
Okay. What was that?
No, I've never had a situation where I was uncomfortable. I've never had a situation that I was uncomfortable with. Never felt intimidated out there. Never felt threatened by players or coaches or spectators. And I think every official in the NFL can say the same thing. You just don't. For some reason, no matter how tough and vicious these players are, they understand authority and they know what their guidelines are. They know what their limitations are.
We'll let you go on this question. We've got about 3 minutes left to go. You often hear commentators say, "Oh, well, Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or a veteran of so many years, they're going to get the benefit of the doubt on a call." Yes, no, just something for the broadcasters to chat about.
It's something for the broadcasters to chat about. Tom Brady is probably the greatest quarterback of all times, but he doesn't like getting hit. He doesn't like he whines and cries a lot. Peyton's the same. All these guys, they don't like to be manhandled out there. They're all looking. Everyone, every player, every coach, they're all looking for this edge. They look for an edge, and that's what separates the good officials from the great officials. Is the ones that can kind of keep it up there and call it just the way they see it, and not give anybody an opportunity to play outside of the rules.
Well, it has been a dear and a wonderful pleasure to have you on the program, Jim. Jim Daopoulos, former NFL official, now an official with the American Athletic Conference. He's going to be joining us again. I promise you that. And he's also going to come on my local show just as soon as I can figure out what days I can get a hold of him. I'm going to see him next month for lunch. Jim, thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us here on The Express. I appreciate it very much.
Gary, it's been my pleasure. Look forward to talking to you and seeing you soon. Take care, my friend.
Sir. God bless. Have a good evening.
Thank
and to all of you out there, thank you, sir. And for all of you out there who've taken the time to join us here tonight on The Express, I thank you very, very much. Next week, we're going to have another great show for you. Again, the show will repeat itself Thursday night on diversitybroadcastnetwork.com. Check it out on YouTube as well as other places too. So until next week, ladies and gentlemen, would you please do me a big favor, take care of yourselves and each other.
You've been listening to The Express with Gary Allen. Join us here every Tuesday night at 10 for more captivating talk with Gary Allen. See you next time on The Express.